All right. Well, hey, thank you very much for sticking around for the final session of today. I would like to just call upon our Master of Ceremonies today, Dusty Johnson. Are you still in the room? Is he close? If somebody could grab him from outside and bring him in. There he is. Thank you very much. Dusty, come on up here. Ladies and gentlemen, I tell you what, this second annual Governor's Ag Summit came together, and it came together with the help of a lot of folks that were behind the scenes planning, but also those in front. And I just want to say an extra special thank you to our Master of Ceremonies today, Chief of Staff, Dusty Johnson. Thank you, sir.
There we go.
Appreciate it. Thank you. The request has already been put in for next year. Would you come back and do it again for us? And he says, we'll make it happen. We'll do what we can to do that. Also would like to say a special, unique thank you to each and every one of our sponsors. I know there's been a rotation of them, and you've seen them on the pegboards outside. But Pfizer Animal Health, Avera, Bayer Crop Science, Senex Harvest States, Farm Credit Services of America, First Dakota National Bank, Monsanto, Pioneer, Raven, Sanford, Dakota Bank, and South Dakota Ethanol Producers Association. Very special round of applause for our sponsors. Thank you very much. You know, in the opportunity that we've had to come together today, it takes time to plan an event like this, but as the Secretary said this morning, it couldn't happen without your participation, your patience, you being here, asking good questions of our panelists. We've been taking notes throughout the day, things that we can do to improve upon it for next year. Clearly this last panel could have been 2 or 3 panels with the amount of experience and depth of knowledge that our participants had. But again, thank you for being part of the discussion and engaging. My name's Lucas Lentsch. I am the Director of Ag Development. It's interesting. The position of Ag Development is not something that I was seeking after, and quite honestly, it kind of found me. And I thought a little bit about myself would be appropriate, a little bit about where I come from, and if you wouldn't mind, Ty, let's go ahead and pull that up. You know, our ag development industry is about families. Where do we come from? The ag industry, at the very core, are farm families. Mine's no different. And I'm honored to share with you that I grew up on a family dairy farm from my junior high and high school years in northeastern South Dakota. We had a small herd and a small classroom that I was part of. Graduated high school with a class of 7, went on to South Dakota State University and pursued a degree in agriculture along with dairy science. And in fact, my college advisor is here today. I haven't really had a chance to visit with him very much, but Dr. Vikram Mistry, he never gave up hope on me, and I'm glad that he keeps showing up. So thank you, Dr. Mistry, for being a part of the discussion today as well. But I'll point out that the folks in the bib overalls, you can describe them a number of ways. They look like South Dakota in terms of optimism. They look like people who are hardworking. They look like they're happy in what they do. And sometimes in society, we've had the sense of the farther from the plow that we get, the more successful we become. Well, I tell you, those folks weren't very far from the plow. And we can have a lot of words to describe them, but I use the words mom and dad. Those are my parents, and that is in our dairy barn back home, and up until recently when they retired. My 2 boys are in the oat field, posing for grandma, and my extended family is at the bottom there, an ag family, a farm family in South Dakota. So when Secretary Walt Bones called and said, I'm thinking about something, I'd like to talk to you about it, I was more than anxious to hear through what he was thinking. And I had the fortunate opportunity to know Walt a few years back through South Dakota Ag and Rural Leadership, where we were Class 2 participants together. And when he asked about becoming his new Director of Ag Development, it was clear to me that there was a passion and an excitement for the Department of Agriculture and in this role. And I tell you what, it has been an honor to become part of the team, but it is just that, it's part of the team. As Director of Ag Development, I have some peers that I also get to work with. Director of Ag Services is here today, Kevin Fridley. Our Deputy Secretary of Ag, John Ferris. Our Director of Conservation and Forestry, Ray Sowers. Joe Lowe, our Director of Wildland Fire on the West River, as well as Joe Bartles with the State Fair. Our Director of Ag Policy, the big 7 or 8 foot gentleman, Blair Dunn. These are my peers. These are the folks that I get to go to work with every day, and a great staff to work with in ag development as well as across the interagency locations. That being said, we've had a couple of months to get our bearings straight. Anytime that you have a new administration, a new Secretary of Ag, a new Director of Ag Development, it leads to opportunities. And I'm very fortunate to welcome some brand new staff. Ty Eschenbaum comes from the Lake Preston, home of the divers. He is my new Director of Value-Added Ag Specialist. So he's been in particular interest in joining the team, and thanks, Ty, for joining us. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to come together and talk about ag opportunities for our Key Leader Roundtable. It's not something that we had planned because we had done it before in the past, but we sat down and we talked early in March. What is it that we can do in ag development that's different than what we've done before in the past? And as we partner and try to do what's right for the industry, we felt the number one thing that we could do is come together with the industry and listen. And yesterday, with the help of the Cheeseman Foundation, we had the leadership of the ag and commodity groups come together, farm and commodity groups, sitting at a round table, literally a round table, having a discussion about what are the opportunities. And I'm going to be jumping into some of those opportunities here later in the presentation. But just some interesting things to look at. You know, a picture's worth 1,000 words, and a video can even be more so impressive. I'd like to just, before we click play on it, what this is in January of 2007, by county, it's the unemployment in the United States. And you're probably wondering, why are we talking about unemployment figures in the United States? But I feel that it tells a story worth telling for us here in South Dakota. Because at times we were always saying, South Dakota gross domestic product, 40 billion. The farm impact of our GDP is 21 billion. But Ty, let's go ahead and roll this, and I'll explain it as we go. The real dark colors is 10% plus on unemployment. The dark purple is 7 to 9%. But month by month, as we roll through 2007, you start to see the change of unemployment in the country. And as we hit April 2008, it's starting to fill in on the western seaboard. And now watch the unemployment. It's like the Black Plague swallowing up the country. May of 2009. Here we are, January of 2010, 1 year left to go. And look at the story that's being told as our country's unemployment goes over 10%. February of 2011. Why do we talk about ag development? It's because it's one of the most significant things that we can focus our time and attention on. This video shows that the breadbasket, the North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, I mean, you look at the Dakotas and we're virtually insulated from the recession. And the opposite will also be true. As the recession heals, it'll move out and away from the Dakotas. So it's not something that is necessarily good to tell on behalf of the country, but on behalf of South Dakota, that's why we're talking about ag development. It really has shown the positive impact that we have here. Next slide is thank you for the Department of Ag, as we called on it, The World According to Oil. Poet had some interesting slides, and earlier today the bankers handed out these very same slides, but I wanted to just point it out to you. I saw it last week and I was looking at it, and it spoke to me in terms of how our world looks if it was all ranked according to oil. It's the whole globe, and you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the United States is fairly small, but you move into the Middle East countries, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and quite honestly, I may be of particular interest as having served in Iraq. It was such an odd sight to see a ditch full of oil. or pipelines on fire, just the idea or the notion that that natural resource could be so abused, it's something that sticks with you. So as we look at the Middle East countries and we see that the globe, and China and Russia in the far northeast corner of this picture essentially are shrunk down. Now let's look at the world according to agriculture. And those countries virtually disappear. So as we were talking earlier about energy independence, and you heard it time and time again, here's the United States. Is there any bigger footprint on the map according to agriculture? And when you think about that, that just comes back to full circle why ag development. The roundtable participation that I spoke of, we had a very robust list of folks that were there, and we couldn't do that without their participation, just like your participation here today is important. The fact that the leadership of our state came together and sat down and had a discussion yesterday, it was the first of hopefully many discussions. But just to realize that while our state has such diversity, we're still very much connected in our commonalities. Again, a very good roundtable participation. As far as the summary, the top 7 issues that presented themselves yesterday doesn't mean that they're the only issues. It's just the ones that surfaced in our roundtable discussion and really ranked according to importance. Infrastructure, increase in livestock production, water issues, youth in agriculture, zoning. We've never heard of that one before. Value-added ag and public acceptance. Communications, telling our story. These are hot button issues, and they're the issues that the industry is looking to for leadership, whether that be from the Department of Ag or from within itself. As far as infrastructure issues, when you think about it, the importance of farm-to-market access. We can talk about raising the biggest crops and having the best livestock to take the market, but we have to have access to those markets. It's very unique times. We've seen so much of our infrastructure erode with the high water. But I tell you what, we're up to the challenge in the sense of what is it that we have to do? Is it a waiting game, or is it starting to sit down and really have that discussion about how do we improve our infrastructure? Rail is an integral part of transportation, the need to identify potential problem areas as well as funding sources, and infrastructure is key to moving South Dakota commodities and products. So again, infrastructure is something that was number one, came up, and I know that everybody in this room, particularly if you live in the eastern part of the state, can feel the pain of infrastructure. That is also access to rails. Increasing livestock production. We have value added on the target as well, but when you think about livestock production and you think about South Dakota Certified, what are the things that we can be doing to continue to add value to our own livestock? And feeding them here in our state is an important option that we have in front of us and that we can continue to build upon. With 1.5 million cattle in our state and roughly half of them heading out of state for feeding, there's an opportunity there for us to improve upon. Let me just take a moment. I mentioned South Dakota Certified, and our office has received many calls from producers across the state about our commitment to that process. And if there's one thing I want you to leave here today is that commitment has not waned. And in fact, where we're at right now is we are in the process of redeveloping, retooling the South Dakota Certified program from gate to the plate. And we've identified a vendor that's been in the business of agent source verification and process improvement of tracking the animal ID through the course of that livestock's life. So the commitment is, it hasn't gone away, and we are re-engaging and refocusing on that. Some exciting things as we look at the beef plant in Aberdeen is that, knock on wood, that's coming together, and I want you to take away that as the funding has come together for that organization, at this point, October 1st is the date that they're looking for processing. And there might be some window of opportunity one way or the other in terms of when that actually gets online. But the reality is that our cattle that we have in the state of South Dakota have an opportunity for value added and becoming part of the South Dakota Certified Beef program. Addressing water issues, one of the comments yesterday, whiskey is for drinking and water is for fighting over. Diversity of South Dakota, some areas need water and others have too much. Quality is also an issue, including urban runoff as well as ag. So again, talking about agriculture story. Attracting and engaging youth. There's a lot of different schools of thought out there. How do we get our youth involved? Question was asked to me here today, how many folks under the age of 35 are here that have or care about agriculture? Let me see a hand back there. Is that Ty? Let's see. Anybody else under the age of 35 here? Let me see. Put them high. All right. So youth is involved in the age as adults, but what are we doing at the high school and collegiate level to improve participation in ag development and interesting in careers in ag? And we've heard that time and time again today. If we can take one thing away, is not just talking about our story, but asking others to become part of it. I'll give you a personal example. I remember in March of 2000, I had the opportunity to bring my family back to South Dakota. We had been living in Nevada, working in food and beverage processing and consulting work, and had the opportunity to bring my family back. And I remember going to our rural community. They wanted to hear about the business that I was involved in. The senior citizens were having a meal. And I remember walking in there and having lunch and visiting with the folks. And I put on a small presentation about my business, the things that I was doing in terms of working with food and beverage companies across the country, but actually doing that from northeastern South Dakota. And the one thing that really struck me as odd was when there was almost you couldn't make it in the real world, so you came back home. That was an interesting feeling. So I stood up there and I said, do you like seeing young people? At the time, my wife and I were 27. I had little babies in the room with us. I said, do you like seeing this? And they all said yes, absolutely. I said, well, then you need to stop doing what you've been doing, and that's telling your children and your grandchildren to go, leave, make something of themselves. Don't live this life. Well, you know, all they've done is listen. All they've done is followed through on what we've been asking of them. Instead, challenge them. Say, hey, go get your education. Skilled labor is absolutely a part of our future. We have to have trained employees and trained workforce, whether that be in the manufacturing sector, but also in the ag sector. We have to have our educated children, young people pursuing opportunities, but yet coming home and growing, bringing those ideas back to our rural communities. I tell you what, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing a small economic development think tank made up of 20 and 30-somethings trying to challenge the business as usual. And it's happening in South Dakota. There are success stories all over the state of our youth coming back in, and I know Dusty had mentioned it earlier during one of the panels. The fact is, we are a net importer of talent. We just need to keep encouraging that trend to continue. Zoning. You know, it's hard to believe in a time when we talk about ag development and we're an agriculture state, much like that slide, that video that I showed earlier about the unemployment coming to the middle of the country, and to realize that we still have resistance to embracing agriculture and ag development and the growth of our industry. We have rural counties that the very breath of life that they get to enjoy is based around or tied to agriculture. Yet when someone goes in front, a successful feedlot, for example, wanting to grow their business, wanting to say, hey, these are the things that we've done and done well, we've met the regulations, and we'd like to expand, but yet they get denied. We have to start asking the question, why are we hurting ourselves in the very communities that we are trying to save and become part of the rural South Dakota? Because if we continue to do what we've always done and tell our children to leave, or when we have an opportunity to grow and build ag development and we choose not to, who's going to be left to continue having that conversation? So zoning, I think I'm sure the Secretary would agree, we're going to really look at that. What can we be doing to support and engage the county local level on zoning and try to become a more active participant in that discussion. Value-added ag, increased research and development to develop value-added strategies, collaboration between public and private on value-added issues, and importance of commitment to value-added itself. Value-added means many things. Recently, our dairy development specialist was with our summer intern traveling to some facilities, and the summer intern, Taylor, asked the question, talk to me about what is value-added agriculture? What's value-added mean? And Dave said, where do I begin? How do you begin to answer that? It could be from the standpoint of corn to South Dakota certified to beef, feeding. It's the entire spectrum of agriculture and that opportunity to increase and add value to our ag commodities, our beef supply, our food chain supply right here in South Dakota. And we may not get all of it, but we can definitely work to improve upon it. And I talk about that value added. In April, had the opportunity to do an exchange to South Korea. And there's a country the size of the state of Indiana, 49 million people, a gross domestic product of almost $1 trillion, a per capita income, get this, a per capita income of $23,000 to $24,000 US. Comparing that to China of roughly that $500 to $7,500, depending on where you're at along the coastal region or not. One of the things about South Korea is they also recently had the unfortunate circumstance of having to kill off 2/3 of their beef supply. When I was visiting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, I mentioned South Dakota Certified, and I explained the program, and it was very clear to me that the idea or the notion of having a source and age verified beef supply, food supply, that is regulated or at least controlled or with a very set of rules that help keep it administered is of value to them. Right now it's Australian beef and the Korean beef, and for example, when I took a picture and did the conversion on it, $69 a pound. Piece of beef sitting under the counter, a little bit of ribeye, highly marbled ribeye, $69 a pound. There's value added out there, and South Dakota Certified or South Dakota cattle ranchers, even the Midwest, that breadbasket can be part of the conversation. I would also tell you, one of the things that I'm seeing is a lot of collaboration. Secretary, I know you would agree with this. There's been a lot of open dialogue with North Dakota, our neighbor to the north, and the governor, your counterpart in agriculture. There's a real partnership about what we can be doing as the Dakotas. And so when you think about a community impact, a regional impact, and a global impact, where are we at in the conversation? And right now, I would tell you that the lid is off. We are looking at everything as a possible opportunity. Export, while it's a buzzword that we like to use, we're still trying to ask the question, how do we quantify it, and how do we have a deliverable on export for the Department of Ag, specifically Ag Development? We have some great resources in the state, but there's opportunity for improvement upon that. Public acceptance. We've heard it. I know the Secretary has written about it. Telling our story. Telling our story. Is that the Department of Ag telling the story? I think it starts at a fundamental level, whether you're that young guy standing in front of senior citizens at lunch telling a story, or you're that person that got a little frustrated at the last zoning board meeting. You know, there are ways that things happen, and they don't happen by accident. How does something happen in Congress? The Congresswoman was talking to us today, and we talk about the lobbying effort. Well, I'd submit to you that before we are so quick to throw a negative word against lobbying, we need to think about what we lobby for. We lobby for what we care about. Are we doing what we need to be doing in agriculture today to be telling our story? Are we lobbying at the coffee clutch, or in the grocery store, or at the gas station, or amongst our groups? That echo chamber that Bill Even had mentioned, it's real. We need to reach out to our friends and our family and our neighbors and start talking about development for the future of our state. What does it look like? Every community will be different, but who's telling your story? You know, we saw California recently banned, as the LA school board, I might be quoting it incorrectly, but they decided to do away with strawberry and chocolate milk. Well, if anybody has kids, and I know with our family of 4, my wife beat it into me. She says, hey, I would rather have them have a little bit of sugar and calcium and protein and vitamin C, and if it's fortified with A and D, than nothing if they don't care for it. The notion of throwing milk under the bus because of some sugar content completely missed the boat on nutrition and quality thereof for our children. Telling our story. We need to do a good job about it at the state level, but I would challenge you, we have to do it at the local level as well. And it will come together, but it takes a commitment from everybody at the local level. So call to action, we talk about leadership, we talk about, and I said lobbyists, but you know what? We are lobbyists, we are agriculturalists, we're environmentalists, we are environmentalists. We care about what we do. We are leaving the land better than we found it. So where do we go from here? I tell you what, ag development is open for conversation. We want to have that conversation with you. And with that said, I would also open the floor at this point for thoughts, any ideas. I know we talked about those 7 topics with our Key Leader Roundtable yesterday, but what other opportunities are out there? I know our staff's ready to take notes. We want to bring what the industry is looking for, and if you weren't part of their conversation yesterday and you've got something you'd like to mention today, I know I have Nathan Sanderson in the back, Ag Policy Advisor for the Governor. He's here to help me as well. Ideas, anything out there that you would like us to be considering as we look at our priority list? Oh, thank you, Jim.
I just wanted to mention a couple.
Almost.
Test,
you bet.
Okay, thank you. Wasn't clear. The gentleman from Monsanto mentioned it, Bill even talked about it a little bit, the importance of connecting with our consumers. And I had the opportunity to attend a meeting about a month or 2 ago with the Center for Food Integrity, in which he mentioned that very same one. They've done a huge amount of research on the consumer's opinion.
Right.
And it really was a changer for me. We never heard animal rights mentioned by that group until we brought it up as a question. Ag people were in the room. Well, what they did is we had 3 panels. One was food bloggers, one was food writers, and the others were just housewives in the Chicago area.
Yeah.
And I really think we need to spend a lot of time, and as a matter of fact, getting that research was done by the Center for Food Integrity as to public opinions. They were really just, you could tell they were just craving for more connection, more understanding who we are. And those particular people all basically were either buying from Whole Foods or organic, which they really didn't know what either one of them meant. It just sounded better to them.
Sure.
And so I think there's a real opportunity there because the public does want to know where the food comes from.
You bet. Thank you. And I know yesterday that was one of the comments that actually came out of the Key Leader Roundtable was, where is our consumer representation? Because as we have the conversation with ourselves, are we really bringing the full picture into view? So, thank you.
Lucas, before we get to our next question, again, Nathan Sanderson, Policy Advisor with the Governor's Office. Ag United for South Dakota has done a fabulous job in the last couple of years. They've had their food chain roundtable here in Sioux Falls 2 different times. They brought Charlie Arnott in with the Center for Food Integrity. Absolutely fantastic message, as you mentioned. I think we've got another comment here from Gary Kamak.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that this spring we had an opportunity to host a couple of 3rd grade classes, well actually 4 3rd grade classes from Rapid City. And when you talk about education, I'm thinking that we're not thinking so much of education as creating and preserving a perception that we're the guys with the white hats. And you get a very good return and long-lasting return from 3rd grade kids.
Yeah.
And I think it's a huge opportunity that we should be taking advantage of. There was 50 kids each day, and we loaded them up in a horse trailer and hauled them around the ranch. But the thing is that every one of those kids, when they left the ranch, it was a windy, rainy day, and my wife gave them a horseback ride inside the barn, and they got to feed a bucket calf, and one kid sent back a thank you for letting me pet your sheep. But my point is that as far as a return for time invested, that was huge. 10 years from now, those kids will still remember that. So I think it's a real opportunity, and I think more producers should consider taking advantage of that.
Sounds like something that's very easy to accomplish at the local level of telling our story. Very good comment. Yes?
Beth Davis, South Dakota Rural Enterprise. In terms of opportunity, I think that we don't get together to talk with each other often enough.
Okay.
To just take the time to dialogue. And two groups, I think, particularly, that need to come together to just talk to each other more is the traditional economic development community and the ag development community. And grateful for some opportunities that I've had in the past to be able to do that, but I think that we need to expand those conversations between those two groups. The other is how we think about community and community development. And so often community is thought to end at the end of those city limits.
Right.
And to really find ways to expand that conversation and make sure that we're including as an economic developer or community developer, but as the ag constituents think about their community, making sure that they're showing up and being an active part of those broader conversations so that we all keep the quality of life that we want to keep in South Dakota.
Absolutely. Very well said.
Lucas, I think we're running slightly past our time. If I may be so bold as to suggest that if any others have questions, get in touch with the Department of Ag directly via email, via phone call. We'll be working to put together the program for next year's summit, and we'll welcome your input.
You bet. Well, and then with that said, thank you, Nathan. We are your Department of Agriculture. We're your Ag Development Division, and we want to be doing the work that makes the most sense for the state of South Dakota. Appreciate your input. Very much appreciate your participation here today. This is how it starts. We have to have that conversation. Thank you for your time and attention, and we'll see you at the banquet this evening. Social starts at 5, dinner at 6. Please join us. Thank you.